Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our speaker for the night, who is Evan.
Thanks. I'm Evan, and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank, I guess it was Alan called, and Coco for having me out. That's great. Elizabeth, you were fantastic. It was terrific hearing you. Happy birthday to the birthday people. And welcome to the newcomers and the visitors. And I think that's about it. I'm out of here. Everybody talked about it already. You guys already nailed what it is, you know? Everybody talked, it's about saving lives, and it's about being dead. I'm just getting into this, the whole concept that I see friends that go back out, and they're dead. They're walking dead. And I realize I was dead. All the birthday people, everyone talked about having relationships, and they had families, and they had people, they were in life. That's what life is being able to love and interact with other people. And you know, this disease was isolation for me at the end. I mean, I had a program when I got here. I had a program when I got to AA. I grew up in Idaho, which is, you know, just a little town in Idaho, and got to go to college there because it's not hard to get into college in Idaho. You had to have a truck, and I learned in college. You know, my first drink was in junior high school. My parents weren't junkies. My dad was a raging Al-Anon, and he had trouble with relationships where he had a timing problem. He would marry into one before he ended the other one, and created a lot of conflict, and but he always kept me with him. I went with him, and we married into a couple relationships, and then they'd leave. And I remember when I was 6 years old, I asked him one time, we were walking home from Sunday school, and I asked him, I said, "Dad, I don't understand God. Explain God to me." And he looked down at me. He was holding my hand. He said, "You know, pal, I really couldn't tell you." And I remember being stunned. I was like, "Are you kidding me? You've got the wallet and the keys and you don't know?" It's like, Jesus, we are in serious trouble. And I remember at 6 years old saying to myself, "I will handle it." You're a loser, you know? We need cash and we need a mom, and I'm going to handle it. And that's what I wanted. That's what I needed. That's what life was. That was my program. It was a two-step program. If you were a woman, I wanted you to love and mother me. It didn't matter who you were. And if you were a man, I wanted to borrow money, you know, or meet your wife or girlfriend and get her to love and mother me. And I worked those two steps as hard as I could for 25 years, one day at a time. There was no book. The meetings were very small. When you're after those two things, love and money, you know, my higher power became what you think of me. That was my higher power. If you liked me or not, that was whether I was in God's good grace or not. Because Dad didn't know God, so apparently there was that's a whole myth thing. That's a whole, I couldn't get my head around religion or... So it was please everybody, you know, and I was terrified all the time, you know, because it's out of your control. It's like, do you love me? Do you love me? Is it okay? And when you're in a room full of people, man, your head assigns a voice to every face. And it's like, and people would say, you're crazy. And they were right, because I'm like, by the time I got to my first drink in junior high, we had Boone's Farm apple wine, and there's no Boone, and there's no farm. That's not even wine, but it worked, I went right to blackout, and every time I drank after that, I was going for blackout. I've always gone for blackout. That's what you're looking at. For those of you that are new, I'm not an expert in AA. I'm a fallen down blackout vodka drunk. I drink and I lay down, and that's your problem. That's who you're looking at. I love blacking out because you could go to parties and not care. In fact, you didn't even have to see people. You were there, I'm at the party. I'm just not booting up any software, Blacking out's like a screensaver for me, man. The machine's on. We ain't gonna be getting anything done, though. So I'm a blackout drinker, and that was heaven to me. That was my peace and meditation, was blacking out. But I worked that two-step program. I wanted you to love me. I wanted the world to love me, and I thought that if I got famous and the more people that love me, then I would be okay. If everyone in the world loved me, I'll be okay. That was my goal. And alcohol took charge. I didn't know how to meet women. I learned in college, and one thing I learned in college was how to meet women. I had no money in college, and I was in the theater department, and pretty unkempt. And I learned this kind of thing that if you did this sort of misunderstood genius poet thing, I really know too much, and perhaps you could buy dinner, and you'd attract a certain kind of caretaking woman, and they'd handle laundry and stuff, and I carried that with me. I added that to my program, to my tools of how to get women, and I wound up in San Francisco out of college. I wound up down there because you could drink. I mean, San Francisco was it was okay. It was misunderstood genius poet central, It was the Haight-Ashbury. I'll tell you what, it was just fantastic. The guy who worked on your car would shoot up in front of you. It was just, it had all that flavor, all that, and everybody was just going down and giving off nice flames. And to meet women, I didn't know how to meet women. I'd hang out at a bar. There was a bar called Bradley's across the street from where I lived at Carl and Cole. I'd hang out at Bradley's bar. It was a funky little bar on the train line, on the N Judah line. And this bar, during the day, you could sell bait there. It was just a dumpy thing. And I'd be there during the day drinking. And at night, it was owned by a gay guy named Bill. And at night, all the gay guys would do this bar crawl from the Haight-Ashbury over to the Castro district. And they just inundate Bradley's, and I'm like, whoa, and they were like, are you gay? And I'm like, well, I don't think so, no, not yet. And and then they'd start pouring doubles, so I'm hanging, and every once in a while, a straight woman would stumble in on her way home from work to have a drink, and they'd just go, oh, the straight guy's down there, and I just like, hey, I'm really a genius. Look at me, and I'd move in because she had a job, and that's how I survived. That's where my program was getting me, and I didn't have any living skills. I didn't pay phone bills. I didn't have a driver's license. I had a driver's license from Idaho from years ago. I had no, barely employable, just skimming above the surface, and I'd drink them out of the house, They'd just have to go because I was totally shut down, And life started getting small, Life starts getting small. Friends start falling away. And my last relationship, I got so good at doing that misunderstood genius help me, save me thing that I wound up with an Irish Catholic mental health nurse. Yeah, that's Al-Anon prep school there. And she introduced me to my first detox. I'd never detoxed. And because I was like, yeah, I didn't know alcohol can't kill you. Alcohol is just a fashion thing, right? I didn't think it was I thought it was a look, you know? I came to in a detox. There's no look in detox. Everybody was just selling their car. And, I just want to get to the bottom really quick, you know. I mean, it was that first detox, I came to in there, and I'd never shaken it out, and I'm worried about what everybody thinks of me, who's the coolest person in detox, you know. And I'm like, can somebody explain this to me? And they were like, you know, tea and honey. I'm like, oh, good, hot tea, you know, and trying to get the tea down. I went off into a room to get the tea down, and I'm working on this hot tea and feeling sick, and I looked up and I saw a 9-inch high mariachi band, and it was all cats. And they had the hats on and guitars, and they were loud and they were good. And the guy who ran the place came in to see if I was okay, and I was like, hey, you're just in time, the band's starting. And you know, he didn't hear the band, he didn't see the band, and if your higher power is what other people think of you, your biggest fear is going to be losing your mind. That's your biggest fear, is that your clutch is slipping, you know. Really, like one day there'll always be a band, and no one hears it. And I stayed sober on that fear for 6 months, and just white knuckling my ass off. And I got to a few of your meetings, and I went, and you guys were happy. Everybody was having a good time. It was like, oh man, you were all showered and everything. I thought you were Mormons. I was like, oh man, I was gonna have to get a bike and brochures and do this whole. And I worked my program again. You know, I just fell back to my 2 steps into my higher power being what you think. And you know what? There is no human power that can work that program and survive. And that's when, you know, it just got dark. My family said, don't come home anymore, you're alcoholic. My father, who had raised me, I was his gem. He carried me through the whole thing, and just said, don't come home anymore. You're an alcoholic. We're not alcoholics. And, don't come home until you have 6 months sober. You know, and then she said, that's it. And I was unemployable at this time. I couldn't. And it just got all my, you know, some friends had tried an intervention at one time, which was really, I felt so bad for them. They were so deluded, you know. It was like, what is up with you people? I am moving. And I was. My last plan was to live under a park bench in the Haight-Ashbury. And I had done pretty well in what little job I could do, which was mainly in blackouts. And I wanted everyone to love me, and I wound up on national television in syndication 4 times a week in blackout and wanting to live under a park bench and broke and absolutely alone. And that's where it got me. I was somebody. I surrendered to, I was in a detox in San Rafael, California, and a guy checked in. I came to, I was sick, and I just wanted to kill myself. I wanted to drink or I wanted to die, and all I had on me was fingernail clippers, you know, and I knew that was going to be tedious, and I didn't know I said a prayer, because I'd heard you people in those few meetings I got to, you talked about a God and a higher power, and I said, if there is a God, give me a flicker of hope, man. And that was my prayer. And I stumbled downstairs, and it was just tea and honey, and I was sick, and I didn't want to live, and some guy came into the kitchen. Guy came in, he checked himself in, he was like 6'4" or something. This guy had a 3-piece suit on. He's all coiffed, he looked great, tie, sat down at the table, and the other guys in the kitchen, the other detox, the homeless guy, they were like, cop, and ran out, and I'm like, I don't even care, you know, and the guy just started talking to me, and he said, how's it going? I said, not good, how's it going for you? And he said, not good. And he started just talking. He said he'd been sober in AA for, if I remember right, it's 7 years. And he had bought his 6-year-old son a bicycle for his birthday, and the next day his son had been hit and killed on that bike. And he said he'd gone to a bar, and he'd ordered a drink, and he drank the drink. He said he put the glass down on the bar, he got up from the bar, walked away, came back to the last place he'd gotten sober, which was Lincoln House Detox in San Rafael, California. He checked himself in, and he was talking to me. And I couldn't believe it, but I knew what he was talking about. And he said it was the hardest thing he'd ever did. He'd been in Vietnam. His job had been in Special Forces to go in and get POWs out. He said that was hard. But putting the glass down on the bar and coming back was the hardest thing he had ever done in his life. And you know, every little bit of struggle in my life, every little challenge I may have encountered up to that time seemed really trivial. And this was a world-class hero throwing up his arms and surrendering to the one thing that has killed me. And he talked about AA being the 12 steps, and he talked about that's all there is, and I surrendered. It was one alcoholic talking to another. It was the first time in my life I said, okay, I'll tell you what, every little Idaho idea I have about what life is about, I'm willing to give up, you know. I'll start totally over. I don't care if I got to wear a diaper. I don't care if I got to pick up litter with a stick. I don't care what I do for the rest of my life. I'm not drinking again, and I'm going to do what this guy does. If you can walk through that, there's hope for me. And you know, since that day, it was May 8th, and it was in 1986, and I've just done what you guys do. That is the only, everything I have that is good in my life is from doing what you guys do. It's what Ron said, the 12 steps. They work, you know. 20 years for me, the 12 steps work for me. And I've tried it without them sober. I'll tell you, I didn't let go of my 2-step program right away. I mean, I did your steps, I got into them, I started getting work again, I got a little job, I had a sponsor, I got an apartment. I mean, life started getting good. I was making financial amends, and then I got very busy, and I got a credit card, and then pretty soon I'm like, I got to look good, and I got to live in the right place, and I got invited to Hollywood. I'm like, and my sponsor moved to Arizona, and I had some peace and thought I had it figured out. And it was like, I'm 5 years sober. I'm living in Hollywood. I'm not really connected at meetings. I hit a couple log cabin, but I didn't really see anybody twice. And I was like getting a little twitchy. But I had the apartment. You know, it was L.A., and I had to have the right apartment. And I had it with the marble fireplace and the view. And then I had the car. I had to have the right car and the shoes that matched the car. And things, you know, and the designer furniture and everything was absolutely great. I was 5 years sober. I was absolutely alone, man. I had everything. I was totally alone, and I was on the road working up in the Bay Area, and I was just getting twitchy. I woke up from a nap in a hotel, and that earthquake was happening. All the furniture was moving around the room, and I thought God was talking to me. I said, I got to marry somebody. This is God talking, and it was, I never felt anything more profound, and the phone rang, and it was this girl I'd met in Canada once, and I was like, oh my God, this is a sign from above, you're it. She was like, really? I'm like, yes, we got to I'll come get you. Well, And I drove up there. I was like, she got in the car, looked great in the car. We listened to U2 all the way down, you know. And I was like, yeah. We got married on the beach. It was like, it was the most fantastic 2 months ever. And there came a point after 2 months where I was like holding up the designer sofa and she had a knife, and I was like, I gotta get to more meetings, because this never happened before. And I needed a sponsor, and I went to meetings, and I looked for a sponsor. I called people I knew, and they put the right sponsor in front of me. You guys, I tell you what, if you're new and you don't know what to do, ask somebody. Just put it out there. It'll happen. It's so incredible. I had the best sponsor for what I was in. It was so incredible. And to realize that the 12 steps are it, to get back to some meetings, to get hooked up with you guys again and start feeling that comfort. All my best decisions come from a place of peace, you know? And I have to get that peace that I get sitting with you guys, that I get being with you, that I get hearing from you and talking to you. And, you know, I got Howard P. as a sponsor, and we got right into the steps. I'm powerless over her. My life is unmanageable. You know, God can restore me to sanity. And, you know, I'm willing to turn my will and my life over. How about a little inventory? Okay, let's do some inventory. What really happened here? Okay, well, we got married and she's trying to kill me, you know, and no, back up. Basically, let's get to you kidnapped a woman from a foreign country because you were in an earthquake. Oh, yeah. You back up enough, you get to see her insanity, huh? And to make amends to her. What's the amends? Let's put her back. I have absolutely disrupted this woman's life, and I don't have the chops to love her. I don't know what love is. And I talked to Howard about what love is, and he'd been married to Pat for 30-some years, and I was like, how does that? And he talked about love, and he talked about what it requires, and he talked about love being an action. Love is an action. I thought love was a glance across the room and I thought love was an urge, man. Love isn't an urge. Love is when when I put my wants aside and I ask what I can do to make your day go better, and then I take that action. That's love. Anything less than that is the intent to love. I have a lot of intent. It just doesn't pay off. There's a lot to surrender to, you know? And one more time to make the amends, to do that, to move her back, to get her set up, to spend the money, get her life back the way it was, to follow up for 6 months, make sure she's safe, she's okay. And all the time I'm going to meetings and I'm hooking up with you guys and I'm staying on that path. And you know, after I handled that, it felt great to go up at the last time, make sure she was okay, and leave Vancouver. It felt peace. And I was like, man. And I drove down the coast, and I felt some freedom. And I got back to LA, and you know, I'd made all my financial amends except for the IRS, because they were great. They'd keep like a running tab, you know, and you could just sort of roll it over. I got back to LA and there was a letter waiting for me from the IRS. It just had my name and it just said pay now, and it had that number, and I was like, oh my God. And I just lost it. I just started loading camping gear back in the car, and I'm leaving the country, man. I got to leave the club. I didn't pay the cover, and I'm going to live underground. And I'll call Howard before I go. He's been a great sponsor. And I called up Howard. And Howard was a great sponsor because he was an engineer. He always talked about swirling electrons and stuff. He never talked about scripture or anything. I called Howard. Howard, I want to thank you. You've been great. I got to head out. I just have this problem. He said, really? He said, you know, Jesus had problems. I was like, yeah, I reckon he did, Howard. Look. This is a big problem. And he said, well, Jesus' problems were pretty big, don't you think? I was like, well, yeah, to him. He said, have you ever not had problems? I said, no. He said, there have been problems since Jesus' time. He said, I've always had problems. He said, I reckon we'll always have problems. He said, what's fantastic is we have a 12-step program for living where we can face any problem and walk through it, apply those steps, and come out the other side. There's a miracle. Isn't that fantastic? And I knew he was right because I'd seen it in his life, and I'd seen it in mine, and I'd seen it in yours. And the fear went away, and I surrendered one more time, and I'm powerless over the IRS. And yeah, I've been crazy. And God, I'm going to turn my will over to God and life on life's terms. You know? Do a little inventory, a little financial inventory. Maybe somebody's paying taxes and I'm not. Street lights are on, man. I ain't kicking in. I started doing an inventory of stuff I like, taxes go to. There's a lot of things I don't care about. I don't care about the car on Mars. I could give a shit about that. But there are things I really like that taxes pay for. My favorite is the yellow, double yellow line in the middle of the street. And that's where my tax money goes. And I surrendered and started paying those taxes, you know. Life has gotten great. It was hard to do. You know, I had to lower my standard of living. When you don't pay taxes, you can live pretty good. I had a nice place. And, I had to give it up. And I didn't know what to do. I was in the Marina Del Rey. And Jan Moran, after a meeting, Howard sent me to a meeting. Jan Moran and I were walking around after the Marina Center, and she was pointing at the boats in the marina. She said, that yacht's for sale. You could live on that. You could. I was like, that's what I need is a yacht. You're not listening to me. And she said, no, you could live on it. You could. And I was like, wow. And I met the guy, and he needed to sell it, and I moved on to a sailboat. I'd never sailed before, but I'd seen the Newport commercials. I knew you could look cool doing it. And sailing has turned into one of the greatest things in my life, you know. I've been living on boats for 13, going on 14 years now. I've sailed from Hawaii to Santa Barbara. I've sailed down into La Paz. I've sailed. I sail. I love sailing. It is the greatest thing in the world. I would never have found it if I had not surrendered and paid my taxes. It's turned into the perfect 11th step for me. If you can't, you untie, because I'm living on it, so I got everything of value. I mean, the first time I took it out, I was I'm going sailing. Everybody was like, have you had lessons or anything? I'm like, no, how hard could it be? I've read everything. And I took it out, you know, and just motoring out, and the wind came down one of the basins on the channel, and the whole thing starts going over like that. And that's not in the book, how the wind... It just freaked out, and I just let out a sail, and I let out the rope, and the boom swung out, and it came up like that, and it moved forward. I was like, well, that's how you sail right there. And I got home that night, I grabbed the Annapolis Book of Seamanship, and I was like, I was thumbing through, what the hell was that with the healing and the... And it talked over 3 or 4 chapters. It basically said we have no control over the wind or the waves or the ocean or the weather. We have control over the attitude of our rudder and the attitude of our sails. I'm like, where have I heard that crap before? And it's true. It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate 11th step, man. You don't have time to ponder and freak out and panic. You don't care about taxes. You untie your house and go out in the ocean. You don't have time. You're way too busy to worry about anything, you know. And today it's my 11th step. You know, I find peace out there. When we were coming back from Hawaii, we stopped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. In the middle, the high is like this no weather area. It's like 200 miles across, and it's just no wind, no waves, no nothing, just sun. And we're in the middle of the largest body of water on earth, and we just stopped the boat and went swimming. You're in like 25,000 feet of water. And you really don't want to feel anything on your foot. But once you relax and you lay on your back and you look around and there's nothing on any horizon. There is absolutely nothing. There's no 7-Eleven. There's nothing. and the sky and the salt air and the warmth and the floating and the salt and you realize we're covered, absolutely covered. The universe is like a huge womb, you know. And sailing at night, doing night watches when every star, you can see every star. And you're alone at the helm, and you're seeing like shooting stars and comets and meteors like every 30, 40 seconds out there. It's incredible. I don't know about you, I always thought of God as this old crazy guy with a beard, you know, trying to go, that crap didn't work either, you know. You know, it's like, man. And to find some peace, to find all kinds of spiritual awakenings, it's been great. And then you get back to shore, you know, and I'll tell you, it's always been back to these steps, because I start thinking I know what I'm doing, and I don't, you know. I realized I had this career. I started grasping when I was 16 years sober. I think it was Ron mentioned it. I wanted for nothing. I called my sponsor, who was Jack Kay at the time, in Rodeo. I said, Jack, I don't want anything. He said, it feels pretty good, doesn't it, baby? And it felt incredible. It felt incredible. Yeah, Jack Kay calls everybody baby. He loves that. But I started realizing my job, I didn't like the job I was doing. I was performing, and I realized I've had stage fright for like 24 years. And I didn't want to be anybody anymore. And all of a sudden I had friends and I had family. I had my family back. I had brothers I'd never met. I found out the story of my mother. I found out, you know. I found out the reason my dad raised me away from my mother is when I was 2, he came home and she was face down, blacked out on the kitchen, you know, floor. And I was crawling around in a dirty diaper. And he went to her doctor in Glendale Memorial. He said, my wife's an alcoholic. What do I do? The doctor said, if she's an alcoholic, there's nothing you can do. And this was in 1958, and he just put me in the car and he just drove till he ran out of money. We didn't have a lot of money, so it was Utah. But in 1958, she kept drinking and she got epileptic seizures. She got in a car wreck and she found out where we were and tried to kidnap me back. And she wound up getting arrested for kidnapping. She wound up going to jail. She lost her other child. She had an older son. And she'd been a dancer. She'd been a choreographer in motion pictures. She'd been very successful. And she wound up committed to the Utah State Mental Hospital for the rest of her life, in and out, with epileptic seizures. Because she didn't get what you guys offered. She didn't hear what AA had. What's wild is I think today she made sure I did. Because there is no explanation for me not being drunk, dead under a bench in the Haight-Ashbury. It's grace. I asked Jack, I've had so many sponsees, man, they disappear and they're gone. They are gone. This disease kills people. It kills, I mean, we're dead. We aren't supposed to be here. And you read the book, my first laughs. When I came in, all I wanted to do was laugh. And my first real laugh was Bill's story. It was on page 16. And it says, right at the end of that chapter, Bill says, one poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. Paragraph. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. And I realized what's funny is we're not dead. We are not dead. That's the joke. We are not supposed to be here. That's our fellowship. It's a lifeboat, man. I see dead people. We're so blessed to be here. If you're new, I really urge you, just hang on to your seat, you know? If there's stuff I say that sounds weird or sounds messed up and you don't believe it, that's good. Grab that book. Grab the big book, the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Grab it and find out where I'm wrong and highlight it. And write it down and stay up late and grind on it. And call somebody and let them know that guy was talking, you know, you can't, and argue and get upset, you know, and then go to another meeting, and it might work for you too. It doesn't matter. Just keep coming back, you know. And you'll find your way. You'll find your spiritual path. You'll find a higher power that makes sense to you. Today, I believe there are a set of immutable laws in the universe that I have come to believe in. And they're always there. They were always there. And I just didn't know what they were. The same way gravity. I get up in the morning. I have no doubt that gravity is in full effect this morning. I don't test it. I don't mess around with it. I don't make jokes about it, you know. I'm pretty sure that gravity is always happening. And it's unseeable. It's inexplicable. Einstein died trying to figure it out. But it's there. No one doubts it. And I think there are laws like that about love. I think there are unseen, immutable laws underlying our fabric of existence that are in effect all the time. If you want to make more money in your job, be of more service. If you want to find a job you enjoy more, find something you enjoy doing for other people more. You know? If you want to be loved by one person in particular more, you can offer them more love. You can do things for them. If it still doesn't come back, that's probably not the person, you know? It's learning life on life's terms. And what's great is these 12 steps. I do these steps, man, I do them all the time. I can't tell you, I did an inventory. In November, I did an inventory. In November, I was freaking out. I'd been sober for 19 years. I had not been able to have a relationship with a woman for more than 6 months. I could not date. I could get to 6 months, and I'm just like, I got to get out of here. And I thought, I'm not even going to date. I'm not even going to look for romance, right? I'm just going to have women friends, right? And then I had a couple women friends. No romance, no nothing. We go to meetings, hang out, go to a movie. No romance, nothing. And at 6 months, sure enough, we're playing Scrabble or something. I'm like, this ain't working. Get the hell out of here. And I realized we don't even have, and I'm losing it. And I couldn't believe it. And I had a half-brother call me. He said, would you call our stepmother down in Garden Grove? She's got Alzheimer's, you know, and it would really help if you called her and freshened her mind a little and said, hey. And, you know, I couldn't pick up the phone. I could not pick up that phone. And I called Jack, and I said, I don't know what to do. He says, wow. He says, sounds like you have a resentment. What's her story? And I said, oh, well, they lived with us for a while when I was 5 years old. And then he said, how long did they live with you? And I said, like 6 months or something. He went, oh, that sounds kind of familiar. Sounds like you got a resentment. I said, it's not a resentment. He said, because I don't want to hear resentment. That means I got work to do. Because I work with, hey, that's not a resentment. I'm just pissed at that guy, you know. And so I did inventory on her, and I wrote her story, and I wrote out all my anger, you know, and I read it to Jack, and I forgave her. I understood that she did an amazing job raising her son as a single mother in the 50s. And I understood why she left my father. I understood why she left me. They had lived with us for 6 months. I had made her promise that she would be my mom forever, and she left at 6 months. And I've been holding that grudge for 45 years. I've been taking it out on every woman I meet just by not trusting you. I could not trust you. And you know what? After I did that inventory, my heart just softened and opened up, and I saw every woman on earth as a human being. As a human being. And I had trust. And it was 2 months later, I ran into my girlfriend now, Shauna, you know. And I trusted her enough. And we just turned 8 months in our relationship yesterday. Yeah. We aren't speaking. No, I'm kidding. We're learning how to have a relationship together. You know, anything you need. This program is fantastic. The most valuable thing you learn is to forgive yourself, to be human, to laugh at yourself. Humor's human. If you haven't laughed, it's because you're not looking for a God outside your own head. If you have a God that's your own brain, nothing's funny. It's not until you stop and meditate and get with a power that's greater than yourself that you can contemplate how small your ideas really are. And it becomes sublimely ridiculous. And that's why they say, you know, make God laugh. Tell him your plan. My life is great now. I want to thank you guys. I want to wish you a happy birthday. If you're new, I implore you to come back and get a good life. I have comfort today. I have peace today. Most of the time, I don't want for anything but what I have. I'm absolutely grateful. I have a ton of people I love in my life, and it's great. Don't start thinking you know what's going on. Stay dumbfounded. That's my favorite thing. I got cocky once. For a while, I got spiritually cocky. I drove to the McDonald's on Venice and Lincoln there and ordered a crispy chicken meal at the drive-up window. And I got up to the window, and the woman handed me a bag, and I paid her for one crispy chicken meal. And I looked in the bag, there were 2 crispy chickens. Have you done that? And I was like, that rocks. They made an error. Thank you. And I drove off, and it was like, that's a happy meal. And I got home, and I got 2 crispy chickens. I started scarfing them down right away, and I started feeling sick right away. And I've been reading Emmett Fox, where he talked about the 10 Commandments. It's not thou shalt not steal, it's you can't steal. You can't get away with it. You'll pay the price. And I called my friend Jim from the Men's Stag, and I said, my God, Emmett's right. This crispy chicken thing just happened. I got sick right away. Jim goes, bring it up at the Stag. I said, I will. That's profound. And that was my share at the Stag that night. It's crispy chicken, and you get sick right away, and you can't steal or you'll drink, and these laws, and the guys were like, yeah, that happened to me. And I realized the next day I got to pay for this crispy chicken, man, or I'm going to end up drunk or something. And so I'm driving down Lincoln the next day, and I figure I'll get a crispy chicken for it's lunchtime, and I'll pay. I just pay. I got to pay for this. And I pulled in the driveway. I ordered a crispy chicken meal, and I got up to the window. She handed me a bag. It had 1 in it. I said, excuse me, ma'am. After I paid for it, I said, how much is a sandwich by itself? She says, would you like another one? I said, no. I was in yesterday, I ordered a crispy chicken meal. You gave me a bag with 2 crispy chicken sandwiches, and I drove off, and I would like to pay for that extra sandwich today. She said, that was a special we were having. Stay humble, stay dumbfounded. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on 1 short burst, then 1 long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.